At 02:15 hours local time, the first drone drove straight into a fuel tanker in the heart of a 50-truck Russian column, and 40,000 liters of diesel went up in a single sheet of flame. The blast climbed above the convoy and radiated outward, hot enough to cook the tankers parked 30 meters away without ever touching them. Within 3 minutes, it had spread down a kilometer of stalled vehicles, diesel, 152mm shells, Grad rockets, an entire frontline sector's week of supply, into one wall of burning fuel and detonating ammunition, a black column of smoke rising high enough to be seen clear across the Perekop Isthmus. 50 trucks, one road, and every one of them had driven into the trap themselves. This was the second strike of the night, and to understand how 50 trucks ended up stacked bumper to bumper on a single road with no way out, you have to go back 6 hours, to a bridge 70 kilometers east. The Armiansk Bridge sits at the northern gate of Crimea, on the narrow neck of the Perekop Isthmus, the last road-capable crossing between the peninsula and the southern front once the shorter route was gone. And 6 hours earlier, the shorter route had been taken away. The Chonhar Bridge, 70 kilometers east, the faster artery around which Russia's entire logistics schedule had been built, had been struck and dropped into the water beneath it. What was left of Russia's supply network in the region now funneled through a single point. 50 trucks, one road, no alternative. Here is the part that matters. Ukraine did not chase those 50 trucks across Crimea. It did not hunt them down one by one. It destroyed a bridge, and then it waited. With Chonhar gone, every vehicle scheduled to cross there was rerouted west toward Armiansk, and the trucks began to arrive. Fuel tankers rolled in from the depots to the south. Ammunition carriers came up from inland storage. A truck packed with FPV drones, lithium batteries, and coils of fiber optic cable joined the line. The kind of vehicle that keeps a sector's drone war alive. The spacing between them shrank from 60 meters to 30, then to less. The column stretched nearly a kilometer back from the ramp. The lead truck stopped 100 meters short of the bridge entrance, and behind it the road filled solid. Nothing could move forward. Nothing could reverse. And the Russian defenses had followed the trucks in the Pantsir S-1, a Tor M2, an electronic warfare vehicle, not because of the convoy, but because Armiansk was now the obvious next target. They believed they were guarding the right place. The convoy believed it was sitting safely inside their umbrella. Neither had understood the trap they were parked in. The bridge was never the trap. The trap was that there was only one road left. Start with what the Russians were actually defending against. 18 FP-1 attack drones came at the Armiansk crossing in 2 waves, and the split was deliberate. 8 carried structural warheads meant for the bridge itself, the same delayed fuse design that had punched through the Chonhar deck 6 hours earlier and fired inside the steel rather than on top of it. The other 10 carried terminal control packages, each one flown in its final approach by an operator watching a live optical feed, capable of steering onto one specific truck in a column of 50. 2 jobs, 1 radar picture. And the systems built to stop them had been designed for a very different kind of attack. The Pantsir S-1 sat closest to the bridge, a short-range point defense system, the last hard shield around anything Russia considers worth protecting. On paper, it is a serious weapon. Its radar can hold dozens of tracks at once, and its fire control can guide 4 missiles onto 4 targets simultaneously, cannon backing up the missiles for anything that slips inside a mile. Against a handful of incoming threats, it is exactly what you want between yourself and the sky. But 4 guidance channels is a hard ceiling, and 18 drones spread across 2 bearings is a math problem the Pantsir cannot solve. Think of a supermarket with 4 checkout lanes on an ordinary afternoon. Smooth, efficient, no line worth mentioning. Now send 200 people through the doors in the same 60 seconds. The 4 lanes do not get slower. They keep working at exactly the same speed they always have. It just no longer matters, because the crowd is pouring past faster than 4 lanes can ever process it. The Pantsir crew were not slow. They were 4 lanes against a flood. Here is where the numbers turn against them. Each engagement, acquire the target, assign a channel, launch, guide, confirm, burns something on the order of 5 seconds of fire control time before the crew can cycle to the next threat. 5 seconds sounds like nothing. But an FP-1 crossing that ground at nearly 70 miles per hour covers roughly 430 feet in those same 5 seconds. So every time the Pantsir killed one drone, the survivors ate 430 feet of the gap between the radar and the bridge, closing, unopposed, for the entire length of the reload. The crew fired accurately. 3 drones dropped inside the first 12 seconds, clean intercepts, no wasted missiles. And it still was not fast enough, because while those 3 were dying, the rest kept flying, and the rails do not refill themselves in time. By the time the Pantsir cleared its channels and reacquired, the fastest drones had already crossed inside its engagement window. Too close, too low, moving too fast to be caught on the way in. The point defense system had done its job precisely as designed and still lost the race, because the race was never about accuracy. It was about arithmetic. 4 channels, 18 drones, and a reload clock that ran slower than the drones flew. But missiles were only Russia's first answer. There was a second system on that road that did not fire a single shot at the drones. It fired at the invisible thread connecting each one to its operator. The second system was the R-330Zh Zhitel, an electronic warfare vehicle sitting a couple of miles behind the tail of the column. It does not throw metal into the sky. It throws noise into the airwaves. Its entire purpose is to find the satellite navigation signals a drone uses to know where it is and drown them, jam the GPS, or better yet, spoof it, feeding the drone a false position so it flies confidently off course and buries itself in an empty field, certain the whole time that it is exactly on track. Against a drone that navigates by satellite, the Zhitel is a quiet, invisible killer. It never appears on anyone's screen. The drone simply drifts and dies, and no one watching ever sees why. And it worked. Once, one of the 8 bridge-bound FP-1s took the Zhitel's spoofed signal, slid 40 meters off its programmed line, and hit open ground short of the span. A real kill, scored by a crew that would never even know they had made it. 5 of the 8 bridge drones were now down between the Pantsir's missiles and the Zhitel's jamming. On paper, the defense was holding. Then came the part the Zhitel could not touch, because the 10 drones flying at the convoy were not navigating by satellite at all in their final approach. They were terminal control variants. For the last mile and a half, a human operator took the controls, watching the world through the drone's nose camera and steering by eye, the same way you would guide a remote control car across a parking lot, looking at it, not at a map. The Zhitel shifted their GPS solution by 50 meters. It did not matter. There was no GPS in the loop anymore. A pilot watching a fuel tanker swell to fill his entire screen simply nudged the stick and corrected that 50 meters in under a second, by sight, the way your hand corrects a car drifting toward the curb before your brain has even named the problem. That is the trap inside the trap. The Zhitel was blind to the one form of guidance it could not jam: a pair of human eyes. You can jam a radio. You can spoof a satellite. You cannot jam the thing a man sees with his own eyes and steers toward on instinct. Every dollar Russia had spent making that electronic warfare vehicle brilliant at defeating satellite navigation bought it exactly nothing against a drone being flown like a first-person video game in the final seconds of its life. The jammer was fighting the last war. The war on that road was being flown by hand. And so the convoy package crossed the last mile essentially untouched by the 2 systems that should have stopped it. The missiles overwhelmed by arithmetic, the jammer defeated by a human eyeball, which left one weapon between 50 trucks and the drones already inside a mile. The Tor M2, cycling as fast as its fire control could sequence targets. It would get its shots. But the Tor carried a limitation buried deep in its design, a floor it could not shoot beneath, and the drones were about to drop straight through it. The Tor M2 killed cleanly at first. 2 convoy drones down, one after another, the crew sequencing targets as fast as the fire control would let them. Then the survivors did the one thing the Tor could not answer. They dropped. Every missile system has a floor, a minimum altitude below which its seeker loses the target against the ground clutter, the road, the noise of the earth itself. For the Tor, that floor sits around 65 feet, and the FP-1 operators watching through their nose cameras flew their drones down beneath it. one inbound drone crossed into range. The Tor locked, fired, tracked it for 2.5 seconds, and then the FP-1 sank below 65 feet, and the seeker lost it against the asphalt. The interceptor passed 6 feet over the top of the drone and self-destructed behind it. 6 feet. The closest the Tor came to a kill, and it missed by the height of the truck the drone was about to hit. There was no time for a second shot. 9 seconds. That was the gap between the Tor's last miss and the first convoy drone entering terminal range. 9 seconds, and the drones were already inside it. At the head of the column, a hand-aimed Zu-23-2, a twin-barreled 23mm cannon, no computer, no radar, a gunner walking tracer fire onto a shape by eye, caught one FP-1 at 600 meters and shredded it. A second gun near the center of the convoy killed another, firing across the gap between its own position and the nearest tanker, the gunner knowing that 10 degrees to the right would have put the burst into his own side's fuel. 2 more drones gone. It was not enough. 5 had gotten through, and 5 drones was all it took. At 02:15, they entered the column. The first drove into a fuel tanker dead center. On the operator's screen, the cylinder swelled and filled the frame. 3 seconds of steady crosshair, and then the feed went white. 40,000 liters of diesel ignited in one sheet, a column of flame climbing above the convoy, radiating outward hot enough to blister paint on the trucks beside it. The second hit a tanker 2 vehicles ahead. The tank split along its length. Diesel flooded the asphalt and ran downhill, pooling toward the vehicles below. The third struck an ammunition truck stacked with 152mm shells. For 4 seconds, nothing. No fireball, no flash, just a drone buried in a cargo bed. Then the propellant caught, and the truck tore itself apart from the inside, throwing burning fragments across the road in every direction. The fourth found a Grad carrier. The rockets did not detonate all at once. They cooked off one by one, each ignition spraying propellant and flame across the highway, a slow-motion firework that walked its way down the vehicle. The fifth hit the drone support truck, the one packed with lithium batteries and generator fuel, and lit a chemical fire that would burn hotter and longer than anything else on that road, impossible to smother, still going after the diesel had spent itself. 5 hits, 5 vehicles. Less than 30 seconds from first to last, and the column was packed too tight for the fire to stop at 5. The tankers 30 meters from the first blast caught within 90 seconds. Never touched by a drone, just close enough to the heat. Fragments from the exploding ammunition ignited propellant in 2 more trucks. The fire crawled from chassis to chassis, diesel to shell to rocket, until the center of the column was a single continuous wall of burning fuel and detonating ordnance that no crew could get within 100 meters of. And ahead of all of it, the road was already gone. The bridge drones had struck in sequence. Entry joint, center deck, exit connection, and the span had dropped. The lead trucks 100 meters from the ramp had no bridge in front of them and no room to turn. Behind them, a kilometer of vehicles stood solid. Nowhere to go forward, nowhere to reverse. Just the fire, working its way up the line. When the smoke finally thinned, the accounting was brutal. Across both strikes that night, Russia lost 2 bridges, Chonhar and Armiansk, the only 2 road-capable crossings feeding the southern front from Crimea, and roughly 10 vehicles burned out of that 50-truck column, fuel tankers, 152mm ammunition, Grad rockets, and the drone support truck that kept a whole sector's FPV operations running. Not a raid on trucks, the severing of a supply line, and the 2 bridges it depended on inside a single night. And here is the detail that should trouble Russian planners most. The air defense worked. Across both attacks, Russian systems intercepted 18 of 32 drones, better than half. The Pantsir crews fired accurately. The Tor cycled under pressure. The Zhitel scored a kill its operators never saw. Hand-aimed gunners tracked and killed drones in the dark with nothing but tracer and instinct. 56% of the attacking force was destroyed. On almost any other night, against almost any other target, that number wins. It lost anyway, and not because the defense was weak. It lost because every one of those systems was built to protect one target at a time, and Ukraine handed it 2 in the same 90-second window, then made certain the second target could not move. The Pantsir could not be in two bearings at once. The Zhitel could not jam a human eye. The Tor could not shoot beneath its own floor. None of these were failures of hardware. They were failures of a problem the hardware was never designed to solve. Two targets, one road, no time to choose. That is the shift worth understanding. For most of this war, Russia's layered air defense has been treated as a wall, expensive, deep, hard to break. What happened at Armiansk suggests it is less a wall than a set of doors, each built to open for one threat at a time. Force two doors at once, pin the target so it cannot flee while you do, and the arithmetic that makes the wall look solid quietly falls apart. Every remaining crossing between Crimea and the southern front now sits inside the exact same range envelope that reached Chonhar and Armiansk in one night. The trucks that survived will find another road. There is always another road. But that was never the thing Ukraine needed to control. It only needed to know which road and to be patient enough to let Russia drive onto it first. If you found this breakdown worth your time, subscribe. We take one operation apart like this every week, down to the last second and the last system. And tell me in the comments, was this a failure of Russian air defense? Or exactly what happens to any air defense on Earth when it's forced to guard two targets it can't afford to lose? I'll be reading.